welcome to Michigan Football at the Voice of College Football. I am one of your post-game hosts, Desmond. I'm here with my partner, Dre. Thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe. Share the video out on social media. It helps grow the channel. Also, while you're at it, subscribe to Mark's main channel, The Voice of College Football. Also, subscribe to his Discord to where you can join not only college football talk, but also NFL talk 24/7, 365. Thanks again for joining us. Dre, how's it going, my friend?
Well, how about yourself?
Doing good, man. Doing good. It's the bye week, so Michigan doesn't have a game this weekend, but an opportunity to be able to kind of reset things. Take a look. Also, you get to scout your opponent. I believe this was the game last year. Who did Michigan State play before Michigan last year? I can't remember who it was. It wasn't Ohio State because they
I
played.
think Indiana. I have a feeling
Yeah,
it's Indiana.
they played. I think Michigan State played Ohio State the week after and got absolutely throttled.
Right.
But for Michigan, it's a chance to kind of reset. I mean, what a great time for a bye week. You're almost smack dab in the middle of the season. You've got one of your major tests is been completed already. Past that with flying colors, and now getting ready for the second half of the season. So, good, great opportunity. Michigan's in a great spot. You had a couple things you wanted to dial into, so I'll kind of kick it off to you, man.
Yeah. Well, since we're at the bye week and essentially halfway through the season, I think this is a great opportunity to kind of just do like a recap of what we've seen from Michigan. Um, this is a pretty good stopping point, and I'll start. Look, as a Michigan fan, you could not have drawn it any better than the way it looks right now. You're undefeated. You're in a top four. Uh, your biggest test of the season thus far. Well, I guess if you looked at it from the beginning of the year, you crushed both Iowa, Penn State, two of the teams in your schedule that you thought up to this point will beat test, and you beat them both, and very convincingly so. Penn State especially. So for that, you've done well there. The players you depended on coming to the season have performed. Blake Corum has been actually maybe even better than last year. He was really good last year. Donovan Edwards seems to, especially once he got healthy and got his legs under him, looks to have gotten better, as you would think, as a sophomore throughout the year. You've seen JJ, right? At the beginning of the year, we had a quarterback controversy. We really didn't know where it was going to go. Well, finally, JJ took over, and it seems as if he's gotten better week to week. Still a long way to go, but he is, for the most part, taking care of the football. He has added a different dynamic to his offense with his legs. So, and he's helped his offense be more dynamic, right? You didn't foresee Eric All getting hurt, but within that, you've seen your Shoemaker step up as a playmaker for this team. Ronnie Bell's been what you thought, and the receiving core is still, I think, a work in progress in terms of getting them more involved into making explosive plays. But when their name has been called, for the most part, they have been there. And defensively, what I'm most pleased with is the emergence of Mike Morris and Iwabi Oki. Anytime you have two legit pass rushers, as it seems in those two, your defense looks way better, right? So, look, I think they are clicking on all cylinders right now, and you couldn't be in a better position. And they are truly a top four team in college right now, playing well on both sides of the ball. And I said this during the post game. I was obviously hyped, but I meant it. I don't think there's a lot of teams, especially in the top 10 teams, that want to play Michigan right now. That doesn't mean they're scared, but definitely it's going to be a challenge. I think in previous years, Desmond, as a Michigan fan, you didn't want to see Alabama, right? I think you feel pretty good about playing Bama today, based on how Michigan looks and how Alabama looks this year. Not talking about previous years, this year. Georgia is Georgia, but they haven't looked incredibly dominant besides first game versus Oregon. mind you, Oregon has gone on to rebound in their season pretty well, and they have a pretty big game this weekend versus UCLA. So I mean, look, none of those teams, Tennessee look good, but I don't think they will want to line up with Michigan as well. And Michigan presents a dynamic with their running game that I don't know any team in the top 10 is prepared to stop. So look, feel very good about it, and I'm excited for the rest of the season. I really am.
Yeah, and you hit on pretty much all of the info that we talked about, but yeah, Michigan, I think the benefit that they have is really Jim Harbaugh's his style of play that he likes to play offense with, because a run game is going to travel no matter what, right? It could be rainy, you can run the ball. It could be snowy, obviously, as everybody here knows, you can run the ball. When you get those types of, elements, inclement weather, things of that nature, it becomes difficult to be, if you are a pass heavy team or a team that really focuses on throwing the football, whereas Michigan is not that. Michigan is a team that can run the ball and they could play defense. And I think Michigan is really unique when you look at the top, let's say the top five, essentially, is that they do it better than I think any of those other teams do. I think we may have an argument, with Georgia, but I mean, we've also seen Georgia struggle. They gave up 22 to Kent State. They had a struggle for a while with Missouri. So it's not as if this is the Georgia from last year where we saw, a historic defense and we saw them just throttle everybody outside of Clemson in week one. So Michigan has to feel confident going into the back half of the season, because the run game is getting better, like you mentioned, to be able to add Donovan Edwards at this point of the season, right in the last week or two, him getting healthy, to be able to essentially add a running back now is wild, especially one of his caliber. So I would say, it's a really good spot for Michigan to be in right now. Defensively, you mentioned it. I think DJ Turner's played really well on the back end, and really multiple guys on that back end. Mike Morris, Oki, Graham, Mozzie Smith. I mean, when you start to name guys, I mean, the list gets pretty long of guys who are making plays and playing at a really high level. And I think Michigan, if they continue this style of play and just continue to build on it and be better and better, I feel a lot better about that game the Saturday of Thanksgiving, because I just think, like I said, that being able to run the ball, it does a lot of things, especially on the road, right? To be able to kind of calm down that crowd. It's a big rivalry game, so that they're going to be loud, but to be able to have sustained drives, to be able to kind of quiet the crowd a bit, keep keep that Ohio State offense off of the field, right? Keep them on the sidelines. It's probably going to be cold, so it just, a lot of factors kind of come into play. But I think where Michigan is, it's a great spot, and I think with even of the questions that we've had with JJ and the pass game, especially down the field. I mean, if we said before that first game, if we said, hey, JJ's going to have, I think he's number one in completion percentage, if not top three in the country. At this point, I think we would both be extremely happy with that. So, and that's where we're at, So it's a great spot to be in.
It absolutely is. And, for the most part, JJ has done what he's been asked to do, right? I think a lot of our gripes, Desmond, it's not really with him more than it is the philosophy at times, offensively. And we just feel that there are aspects of this kid's game, particularly his arm strength, that they could take advantage of more, right? And granted, when he has his opportunities, he has overshot some guys, but then lies the conundrum, because what I believe, I think you agree with this as well, that's more of a rep issue than an ability issue.
Correct.
Right? And how can you work on that if you're not doing it very often? So, but on the flip side, their running game has been so dominant, and their offensive line play. We can't just glorify Dalvin Evans and Blake Corum. Believe me, they deserve it. But what this offensive line has done has been incredible. I mean, it's rare where you have an offensive line that has the right mentality in terms of being maulers and chemistry uh, to know exactly what they're doing. Guys are doing their jobs, they're picking up their blocks, and Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum are having the vision and patience to manipulate the second level defenders and then take advantage, and then let their natural athletic ability allow them to gash a play. So it's the perfect combination. And you mentioned Ohio State. What I would say about both teams and what's going to make it so compelling of a matchup once we get to that last Saturday in November is you have Ohio State at right now clicking at what they do best offensively, which is slinging the ball across around the field. And then you have Michigan clicking on all cylinders at what they do best, which is running the football. And the way Michigan's running, you would think conventional wisdom is that, man, you can't score and be as explosive with running the football like you can passing the football like Ohio State. Well, if the way that Michigan ran the ball versus Penn State, they were just as explosive as any passing game. They ran for plus 400 yards.
Correct.
And they had huge explosive plays for touchdowns. 50-yard runs, 60-yard runs, etc. Well, I mean, look, if you can do that, then it doesn't really matter. And I don't think to do that versus a team like Penn State, that was the 5th ranked rushing defense in the country. That tells me, one, that you're getting better, and that you can do it against the best, or some of the best, right? And this happens all the time. Once there's a primetime matchup and the final score is a pretty big disparity, then people automatically assume, well, okay, maybe the other team was a little overrated. Well, maybe so, but you know what? There's a reason why they were rated there in the first place. They were doing certain things well. They were handling their business up to that point. So we're not going to totally discredit that team just because they had a bad day at the office and they got beat pretty good. Sometimes that happens, right? It doesn't mean that they go from being a really good team to, they're crap. No, Penn State's a solid team, but Michigan show where they really are, which is you're not on a level, right? And you continue to move forward. So, man, it's very, very interesting. And also, look, one thing I also was worried about, and the reason why we talk about Ohio State is, quite frankly, that's the next big game on the schedule. You can argue Illinois. I think that's kind of dangerous. I think that might be the week before Ohio State. You can't overlook them. You want to make sure that we've seen Ohio State almost get beat by Maryland the week before the Michigan game. So you can never get too high on yourself. But for the most part, Ohio State is the final and actual real next test. And
final boss.
The final boss, if you will, right? And I don't know, man. It's Michigan seems pretty. All you can ask for is whatever you do well as a team, be consistent with it, and be clicking on all cylinders. And Michigan's doing that right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Adrian, so first, sorry, I almost forgot. Let's Toast Media, number one. Thanks for tuning in. But I don't know if you know this, Dre, but Let's Toast Media is a celebrity. He had a mailbag question that went to, I believe it's the number one ranked show with RJ Young, um, and they did like a mailbag, and his question came up. So they had, I don't know if his followers blew up or anything like that, but he had a question, and basically before the Penn State Michigan game, and said, "Is there any way that Michigan could beat Penn State by?" Yeah, I think his question might have been 20 plus. And he asked, RJ that question, and RJ saw it was like, no. Well, then, so he went in to explain it and his thoughts on it, so on and so forth. And then either on Sunday or Monday, RJ did kind of a recap of, the big games, the weekend, etc. And then also brought that clip. So he replayed the clip again, and kind of shouting out Let's Toast Media again. So that was pretty cool. I saw that. So I wanted to make sure that I recognize that, because that was pretty cool. So shout out to you, Let's Toast Media. Just doing big things all the time. All the time. A question came up. Adrian Roberson, one of our loyal viewers. He's here just about every time we're on. but says, is Donovan Edwards better than Blake Corum? What are your thoughts on that?
I have to answer that question as of today. Uh, as of today, no. However, um, I absolutely believe that he can ascend to that point eventually. We got to keep in mind that Donovan Edwards is a true sophomore, right? And he was highly rated recruit coming out of West Bloomfield. You know, quite frankly, I mean, as a true freshman behind two really good backs in Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum last year, he found ways to make an impact and make plays. And that speaks high. That should tell you everything you need to know about how talented this kid already was as a true freshman. And as he's gotten healthy this year, you've seen his impact already. So I would say not yet, but absolutely he has the runway to be even better than Blake Corum, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Edwards is not better than Corum right now.
Real quick, let
Um,
me
Go
10,
ahead.
10 more seconds. In a lot, I want to finish that thought, and most of that is due to the fact that Corum is just so consistent, and I think Donovan is still finding that level. You know what you're getting from Blake Corum, which is, and he's consistent like that every Saturday. Donovan Edwards isn't quite there yet. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think so. They're both talented, right? This is not a bash either
There's
one of
no
these guys,
dissing. They're both
and I don't think you
fantastic
did that
backs.
either.
They're both
Um,
fantastic backs.
right, absolutely, they are fantastic. I think they complement each other really well.
Yeah.
But I'd say right now I would give the edge to Blake. I think honestly I think it's kind of close, kind of close.
Yes.
I just think with Blake, the thing that I think really sets him apart is I think his vision on even the shorter the plays that don't always have a lot of room. Like I still think Blake does a really good job of even finding 2 or 3 yards. You know, where
Yo,
it's not always the home run hitter, but you know even the short yardage runs. I just think he does a little better job as far as his vision of running the ball. What's up?
makes you pick up your 10 strap. Like
What?
he really Blake makes you pick up your 10 strap. Like the way he jukes you out your shoes. I mean, dude, like he's really. Did you see what he did to that one Penn State defender on the sideline?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God! Like now that was pretty crazy, but he does stuff like that in the middle of the field. Like
Well, and he
he's
did
so,
it to in the Iowa game, and actually didn't mention it, but to Jack Campbell, who's supposed to be this mega
All
tackler.
American
Jack
linebacker.
Campbell,
Yeah,
he didn't get blocked at all on that play, and didn't lay a finger on Blake Corum, like
it,
not a finger. So
yeah.
yeah, it's unique what he does, but Donovan's fantastic. Like
Oh
they're
yeah.
both really good backs, but I would give the edge to Corum because like you said, it's consistent. And think about too earlier in the season when Donovan wasn't, ready to roll, he was kind of sitting and getting healthy. Blake took that heavy role, right? So he had
Yep.
even early in the season, the first couple games. I mean, he had some big carry numbers and was still incredibly consistent. Protects the ball. Not that Donovan doesn't, but just a lot of things that Blake does really well.
It was
So
cool. It was cool, man, watching both those guys, and deservedly so. Getting
in the
the
post
post
game,
game interview,
yeah.
and like, through the confidence that both those guys have right now, it's like vibrating off of them. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
the
Well, when
confidence,
you're
their
rolling,
swag,
you just know. Like
right?
they
Their
just know.
swag, it's
Hmm.
like, bro, they're like lightning and thunder. They're just like,
Like we
they were
got
both
it.
smiling, bro. Like they're
Yeah.
like, yeah,
It's like do you remember that stretch that James Harden had when he was with Houston where he had
mhm,
like a stretch of like 20, 30 games of just scoring.
yeah,
I think it was something crazy like 40 points every single game. It's just
yeah,
he just knows like yeah, I'm just rolling. I'm on. Like I
yeah.
feel like that's those guys post game like yeah, we got it. We know we got the juice. We know it.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
got it.
Those two have complete confidence in themselves and each other in the offensive line, and they're just like,
Hmm.
you can't mess with us, like literally, and they feel good. And I'm sure that as a running back, that's probably a really good feeling when you're in a good rhythm. You probably, especially the way they're playing. I mean, they both against Penn State literally had one touchdown. It's like boom, one play out, and that means that especially for a running back, they're in a great rhythm right now. Like they just when they touch the ball every time they feel like they're going to score. But that's how they
Yes.
feel. So I mean that tells you all you need to know about those guys. It really does.
So another question from Ed Rogers, and this will actually lead to the next thing I want to talk
Oh
about.
boy.
Says, are you afraid that Blake will get hurt by? So I don't know if he means by Ohio State or get hurt before the Ohio State game. I'm gonna assume he means the latter, like that he'll get hurt before the game, like with carries and things like that.
It's always a concern. Afraid, no, but it's always a concern. Anytime you have a player has a certain high usage rate, it's always, especially a running back, it's always a concern. I would say one thing that gives me pause to get overly concerned is the emergence of Donovan Edwards and him getting a little bit more healthier and getting his legs. And one thing you've seen pretty much every week is Donovan Edwards getting more and more carries and more involved, right? So that will obviously help reduce the chances of Blake Corum getting hurt. So, and I would say this too. And the the poor kid, he really hasn't got a lot of burn ever since he's fumbled the ball. And part of the reason why he was playing was due to Donovan Edwards not being healthy. But Stokes, at times earlier in the year did show some ability with CJ Stokes, and
Yeah,
he
that
has got a
ability
lot of
goes
burn.
out the window when you put the
Dude,
ball on the ground.
it's so
That
funny.
is
He
life.
really hasn't got any burn since that play. Like not
Well,
at
but
all.
you're correct. But
It's not.
I would say number one that you can't put the ball on the ground.
I
Your
understand
first carry of that. It was his first carry of that
the
game. He
game. Yes,
fumbled, and number
yes.
two, when you think about it, the ability, like the taking away. Hold on for 1 second. What is going on in our group? In our
Oh, that's happened before. Just go and block that out.
Yeah, I'm on it. But what I was saying is for him to get a carry, that means someone else has to not get one, right? So I got to take the ball out of Blake's hands or out of Donovan's hands, and I
That
don't
ain't
want
happening.
to. Right,
No.
exactly.
That was so
So
funny when that happened. Like CJ gives up the ball, literally just to give Blake a spell. This when Blake was a bell cow, right? It was like coach style, like, all right, son, sit down, Blake. You just gonna have to take us home. He's just gonna have to take us
correct.
home.
Yep.
And like you feel for the kid, and I remember when that happened, people were in the chat were like, you don't want the kid to hurt his confidence. But that's something he has to bounce back from because you know what? To Ed's point, look, things happen. You just never know. When your name's going to be called. So, but my overall point of bringing that up was I thought CJ Stokes did show some ability. So, and one thing is very clear, especially since Harbaugh has been at Michigan, is that they do a fantastic job developing their running backs. They really do. Now, of course, natural talent does show the difference. But I'm pretty confident with whoever running back is back there that they're going to be at the very least very especially behind the way this offensive line is playing. So I'm not concerned even a little bit, regardless.
Yeah, I think he'll be just fine. I don't really have any concerns. But you had mentioned Blake Corum and what is his reality of potentially winning the Heisman Trophy or just being in the running. So I'll kick that off to you. What are your thoughts on Blake potentially getting to New York at least, and from there potentially winning the Heisman Trophy?
Well, before I go into that, let's go into like what are the aspects I think or boxes that you need to check to be a true Heisman Trophy finalist.
Okay.
And I haven't seen any state fans here in a minute in our chat, probably due to how their season is going.
Jeez, shots
But
fired.
just saying, hey man, it's rivalry week. Well, it's not rivalry week, but we're really close. It's next week. But I personally thought Kenneth Walker III should have been a finalist last year. Right now, you can
Okay.
you can decide who should have won, who shouldn't have. Should Aiden have went? If I don't care, but I thought he was that important to state. He was the main reason why they were a 10-win football team, and he had the moments of carrying his team in a big spot. So let me get that out the way. So I think you need to have one of the stats that show that you were a premier player in the game. Right, it sticks out. Right. I think you need to have the moments. What I mean by moments is there's a big game and between you and a highly ranked team, and you are the driving force of the outcome of that game. right? Um, and I think I think part of it's due to the momentum, right? Like it getting better throughout the year. You can't be one of these guys that starts off hot early in the year, but then like your stats and your impact lessens throughout the year, right? It needs to be consistent. So when I look at all those aspects up till now, um, Blake has had the stats, right? He's had the 5 touchdown games. He's ran for 2. I think he ran for 300 yards earlier. I mean, one game, but definitely 260 or 270, I believe. He's had the moments thus far, right? The carrying the team versus Maryland, carrying the team versus Iowa. You saw what he did with Penn State. Of course, he had help with Donovan Nevers, but I'm just saying, like, he's that driving force. Blake Corum is he's the straw that stirs the drink from Michigan. He really is. His leadership, his consistency, his home run ability, it totally changes the outcome of the game. So from that standpoint, absolutely, I think he has earned the right as of today to be a Heisman Trophy finalist and potentially win it. He is he has been the most important player for the number 3 team in the country.
Absolutely. And it's so funny that you mentioned those things because that's, I literally had this typed out. What makes a Heisman Trophy candidate? I had stats, which as of today, and I had those stats, that Blake Corum is number 2. So this is through, yep. So he is number 2 in the country in rushing yards. He is 901. The Illinois running back, Chase Brown, he's over 1,000 yards already. He's at 1059.
It's not shocking.
But he's got almost 50 carries more than Blake does. I mean, that's essentially, basically 2 games. So he's got a lot more carries, but many fewer touchdowns. So Blake's got 13, he's got 4. So I think obviously stats is number 1. I also put impact, which I think we can all agree that his impact on these games and especially on the biggest game is huge, right? Donovan had some impact as well, but I think it's been Blake as the driving force, and then also too the Heisman moment. I had pulled up, let's see, Heisman Trophy winners. So, as you go through them, you can kind of see like they each had their moments, right? Devontae Smith last year, the LSU one-handed catch on Derek Stingley. You had Joe Burrow in 2019. I mean, pick a game, he threw for 1,000,000 yards. Kyler beating Texas. You had Baker Mayfield beat Ohio State kind of early in that, in that season, but also went on to win the Big 12. Lamar Jackson, the Florida State game. So you've got to have that Heisman moment, and I think for Blake, I think most likely it's probably going to come in that Ohio State game because I think of just the impact. That's going to be the biggest game of the year for Michigan, like without a doubt. Like we're clear and in lockstep on that. So if he comes out and I think Let's Toast had put something about 150 against Michigan State and 150 versus Ohio with wins, I think that'll be enough. Because if Blake Corum gets to 150 yards, we're probably at least going to see 2 pretty amazing runs where he's just fantastic, where we're in awe of just his athletic ability.
Let alone, if he has it's kind of hard to ask for 5 touchdowns like Asada Haskins did last year, but if he has 3 or 4, like you're talking about, like one of the eye-opening things about the game last weekend was I felt that Michigan broke Penn State's will after a certain point. Like they totally broke them. It hit a point where Penn State could tell, and they played hard. They tried. They're like, we can't stop these guys. Like we can't stop them. And they were woofing it up at halftime. And side note, I found that really funny. I don't like
throwing peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Yeah, right. It's like I don't like to kick a man when he's down, but it's like, and it was funny.
I love when people say that. I don't want to kick a man when he's down, and then here comes the kick.
Here comes the kick, though. It's about to be a big kick too. It's. And I think Mike Morris brought it up, and talked about it. It's like, they were woofing up at halftime. I'm like, bro, like, The only reason y'all were in the game off 2 fluke plays. Like
Hmm.
y'all were being dominated the whole game. Y'all want to talk trash? Like it is just like and then they saw what happened in the second half. And I found that funny. But anyway. Um
So what was that? 25? How many points did Michigan score in the second half? What was I'm trying to figure out what that second half run
I think
was cuz
they had it was 16 to
so
14 at
25-0.
halftime.
Yeah, 25-0
Yeah.
run in the second
It,
half.
yeah, it's just like, I don't know what, like I just found that funny, like bro, y'all down 2 and y'all
You played is absolutely well, no, let me rephrase that. Michigan played an essentially flawless game outside of 2 plays, and that's the only reason you're in the game is
yeah,
2 plays. That's
literally
it.
like
That's it.
like 2 fluky plays, and like I just found that funny. Y'all want to woof up at halftime, but hey, stick your chest out if it make you feel good. But it's I don't know. I forgot my train of thought. Why I even went there, but breaking the wheel. So no,
Hmm.
no, no, and so if Michigan, it reminded me in a way what they did. Right? It got to a certain point where Ohio State, it didn't matter how bad they were trying to come back throughout that game. It's like, that's why I find it funny when people bring up the elements like, no, Ohio State on that day was not going to stop Michigan's running attack. It just
Correct.
wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to happen. Partly due to something that they struggle with all year, which is their rush defense, and also how great Michigan was running the football on their own right. So, um, if that happens again this year and Blake is the driving force of that, man, yeah, I think you're talking about a consistent year with the stats he's had, plus that moment. That guy deserves to be in New York, and I think has a pretty good shot to to win. I mean, look, Des, the way that this season has gone. I mean, you got a running back. Let's say that happens, right? And Michigan's number two in the country, and Blake's had the year he's had. Man, it's gonna be hard to not sell that guy winning the Heisman.
Yeah, and honestly, I think about it. If Michigan goes 12-0, I'm not even sure Blake needs a Heisman moment against Ohio State. I think he would have enough just on his current trend where I think he'd be, because I mean you'd have to imagine he'd be at least a 1,500-yard rusher. He's got 13 touchdowns right now, and we all know that number's going to increase because Jim Harbaugh likes to run the football. So that number's only. I mean we're talking 1,500 yards and 20 touchdowns, probably bare minimum. That's going to be for the number 2 team or potentially number 1 team in the country. That's going to be really difficult. It's going to be he's got a ticket to New York with that. That I know
Absolutely,
that for sure.
yeah.
He's got a ticket for that.
Great story
Um,
too, by the way. This is a great story. Comes from a very humble background. Um, Overall, I mean, he's built really good for running back. For height wise, he's kind of undersized, about 5'8". He's the kind of guy you root for. He really is. He's a workaholic kind of kid, high character kid. And you know what does for me? I love seeing people be rewarded for their hard work. If Mike Hart puts his uh, credibility on the line and says, "Look, this kid works too hard sometimes," and I have to tell him, like he said that during a pregame show. Like I had to text him and talk to him sometimes. Like, hey, it's okay to take some. It's okay to rest your legs, man. You're a running back, dude. Like
that's impressive. That's
rest is
impressive.
just as important as work. Mike Hart tells you that who was an incredible worker
Hmm.
at Michigan. All-time leading rusher at Michigan. We know his credentials. That's telling you a lot. And to see that kid's work, patience, and also work pay off, man, is great. And if he continues to do what he's doing, he's going to make some money on the next level. He really is.
Yeah, absolutely. Adrian says, I had to ask, but was Penn State overrated? I'm not gonna to go that route as far as you beat a team that we all talked about and everyone had their score predictions. I thought it would be a closer game, but I thought Michigan would win.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not. I think Penn State is one of the 15 best teams in the country. I don't think that's
Yeah,
crazy. And I just
yeah,
think Michigan is truly that much better. I think Michigan's strengths really was I think that was a bad matchup. I think because what Michigan does really well, run the football. Even though Penn State, statistically had done it well, Michigan just does it at such an elite level that the Penn State was just kind of stuck. And I think the only possible way that Penn State had to move the ball against Michigan's defense is for them to throw the ball down the field, and they didn't do that. So, and then Penn State offensively is just, I mean, they're not. I don't want to put them on Iowa's level, but just no one concerned me for Penn State's offense. Like no one was there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I lied. You have to highlight comment by Stan. I want to address this first by your purpose.
Your audio keeps going up and down. What'd you say?
I said you have to. Do I sound good now?
Yep, you're good.
I say you have to address. I'm laughing at this comment by Stan at 5:36, but I want to address this question by Adrian first.
This is unique. Go ahead.
So Adrian, it's funny, man. We always play this game, and I'm guilty of it. A lot of us are guilty of it when there's I said it earlier, when it's a highly ranked matchup, and then the final score shows a high disparity in teams than what the ranking difference would indicate, right? You wouldn't think the number 4 team versus number 10 team would be a 25-point difference or whatever it was, or 27-point difference. However, there are a couple of things that I think playing here. One, recent history, Penn State never plays well against Michigan at the Big House, right? If you exclude 2020, and I don't count that, especially there were no fans, Penn State seems to get destroyed when it comes to the Big House, right? Two, Michigan, I think when you look at both teams coming into that game, I think was playing more consistent on both sides of the ball, right? Michigan was playing better football, and not every undefeated team is in how good they're playing is weighed evenly, right? So were they slightly overrated in terms of their ranking number? Perhaps, but I'll be careful to say that in a way that degrades them to like a non-rated team or not a solid football team. They're a solid football team. They have talent, especially on their defense. But on Saturday they had a bad day and they got beat pretty convincingly by a team that was a step and a half better than they were.
But even on the I'm not sure they had if that game happens tomorrow, I'm not sure it's that different. Honestly, it's probably worse because you probably don't have those 2 fluke plays. You know what I mean? I don't think I subscribe to the Penn State had a bad day at the office. Didn't they struggle with Purdue? Purdue's not a awful team, but Purdue's not a game wrecker or anything like that. They're not world beaters. So
they're not a bottom feeder. Purdue is like the average Big Ten team under Joe Corum. They're not a bottom feeder like a Rutgers or Northwestern.
And Penn State that. I mean, that was Purdue, a really close game, if I'm not mistaken, right?
But granted, and I'm not going to prop up Purdue. I'm not going to do like what some of you guys do with Maryland, right? I'm not going to prop them up much. But I will say Jeff Brom has had some pretty convincing wins, at Purdue. They went at Iowa and beat number 2 Iowa on the road last year. We saw them beat Ohio State at home back in 2017 and 18. So Purdue has been a pain in the butt for a lot of the upper echelon Big Ten teams, and so I mean when that game happened, I wasn't at that time oh wow, Penn State must not be this good this year because they're struggling with Purdue. Purdue sometimes can be a pain in the butt. The shoe fits before when they were good. So at the time I didn't really, kind of overlook, overanalyze that. Look, I think Penn State is a solid, is really, really solid. I think they are still the best team that Michigan has played this year. And I think they're better than any team that Ohio State has played up to this point this year. Penn State will beat Purdue. Will beat Notre Dame. Okay? It'll be any team that Ohio State has played this year. I don't want to go vision of history, but Penn State will beat Maryland. Okay? But
Would they?
I think they will. I think they will.
I
I
think
think
it'd be close. I mean,
I think the physicality of Michigan wore Penn State down and broke them. I really do. I really do.
I don't disagree with that, but I'm just talking strictly the Maryland Penn State matchup. Do they play? So maybe we may not even need to argue about this. Penn State, but
It may not even matter. Didn't Talia get Carter off the field due to a leg injury? I think I saw that on the ticker.
not sure. But they
I don't
play
know.
in like a month, so
They
they
do
play
play.
each other. But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not. I don't know. I'm not sure that that Penn State beats Maryland, but who knows?
I wonder. This came up, and after the post game show, someone reached out to me, who was watching, and they asked me a question about, to kind of challenge me on my proclamation that no team wanted to play Michigan in the top 10 and stuff like that, and we got talking and kind of mixing it up a little bit, and I brought up how I think it's possible that both Michigan and Ohio State, they can have a rematch in a college football playoff, right?
This year?
Yeah, this year it's possible, right? Based on how chaotic college football has been, and teams going down that's at the top. Well, look, let's say it happens, right? Let's say Michigan rematches.
Well, hold on. Before we just jump the gun on that, I'm not sure this is the year that two teams in any conference get in. And here's why I say that, because you have a couple the Pac-12 is in the mix, and I think before the season started, we didn't think there was any chance that the Pac-12 was going to be in the mix. You know what I mean? The Big 12, let me see. I've got the AP rankings right here. I'm trying to see who the highest rated Big 12 team is right now. Looks like it is TCU is undefeated. Obviously, they won't be, at the end of the season, but Oklahoma State's got one loss. I just think I think just about every conference is in play. Outside of if Clemson takes a loss, I think the ACC is probably done. But then that's what I think. I'm not sure that there's gonna be, those types of weird teams. You know what I mean? Like, because think about last year, like when Cincinnati got in. I mean, what, the Big 12 didn't get a team in. It was what, Big 10, SEC. Who else got in?
Big 12's not getting anybody in this year.
Huh?
Big 12's not getting anybody in this year.
Well, I mean, TCU's number 6 right now.
TCU,
or I'm sorry, number 8.
The Horned Frogs have a chance.
TCU's 8. Oklahoma State is 11. They're 5-1 right now. Kansas State, 5-1. I mean,
I think the Horned Frogs are probably the best shot for the Big 12. I mean, look. Okay,
there's going to be a lot of chaos, but I think it's going to involve a whole lot of teams where multiple schools are getting, or multiple conferences are getting in. I think we're going to have one conference representative from. There's not going to be any conference that has 2 teams in. I don't think that.
Okay. Well, for fun's sake, see what people think. And the guy's name is the Black JB. What he asked me was, we were talking about it. Would you rather win the rematch in a national title game, or the game?
Why?
The game.
Why are we doing that? You're literally saying, hey, you're gonna lose to Ohio State, but still get in the playoff and win the national championship. Would you want that, or come on? That's not like, seriously.
I mean, it was a question. I'm like, I
who
thought
asked
about
that?
For a second, and I was like, no, I'll give me that national title. It would sting to lose to them. Like, hindsight, in the moment, it would sting to lose to them. But then to have the opportunity to play them again, and to play once in a rivalry opportunity, which is for a national title, I get to have a national title in the bragging rights. We beat you,
right? Because think about it. Because Michigan, Ohio State fans have the, Ohio State hasn't beat us in X amount of days. They would only get 30 days or something like that. It's like, all right, you got me end of November, but that's January.
Yes, I got 2 for 1. I beat you, which is great, and I got a national title. And this will probably never happen again. or a long, long time. I'm
It'll
talking
be a
about the
while.
odds of rematching in this type of scenario. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, oh, of course, the latter. You know, give me that national title versus them, please.
That's definitely
Now,
that's definitely not a question. That's not a
okay,
question.
I thought it was funny. We were mixing it up, and I'm like, oh, the latter. You know, of course, it's now, granted, in a moment, I won't know that, right? I don't know that's going to happen if we lost to Ohio State. So I'll be all like a lot of Michigan fans ticked off and like, man, we blew it. But yeah. Anyway,
Um, what was I? So if the regular season ended today, Michigan would be playing Georgia for a spot in the national championship. How do you think that game would fare? Well, according to the AP poll, actually the coaches poll has Michigan at 3. That's funny. So the AFCA coaches poll has Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Tennessee. So if the season ended today, it'd be Michigan playing Ohio State for a chance to go to the national championship. That'd be funny. But anyway, more so I'm talking the Michigan versus Georgia matchup. How do you think that would go?
I feel a lot better about it this year. For one, how Michigan is playing. Two, as of now, Georgia doesn't have quite the difference makers on defense as they had last year. They're still really good, but I mean, what do they put as what 3 or 4 guys in the first 2 rounds in the NFL draft last year? Their
3 or
defense,
4. Man, they had
Jordan
like
Davis.
7 or 8 guys go in the first 2 rounds last year.
Well, I know they were loaded. I know they were. Oh yeah, Trayvon Walker. I forgot about Walker.
You talking
Jordan
crazy right now?
Davis.
One
Yeah,
or two
Walker, Jordan
guys?
Davis,
Nah.
Kobe Dean, the safety. Yeah, they had quite a bit. Yeah, I'm tripping.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you had Trayvon Walker go. Who else am I looking for? Jordan Davis,
Kobe
Quay
Dean,
Walker, Devontae Wyatt,
Devontae White,
and
Kobe Dean,
Lewis Seen. That's
Lewis.
just the first round. How many names did I
Okay,
give you? Yeah, they had
4.
they had second, and I don't know if Dean Wentz did he go second round or third with that injury. Um,
Anyway, the overall point is their defense is loaded. They don't have that same caliber of defense, so I feel a lot better about it. And so I give them a much better shot. I really do.
Yeah, I would feel. I mean, I'm not sure why Michigan wouldn't feel good about that matchup. Like, I think that, I don't think you're going to run up 41 points, but I also don't think
Right.
Georgia will on you either.
No.
Stetson Bennett, I think if you can get some pressure on him, as with most quarterbacks, they're not going to play well. And
Let me
he's
tell
not
you
a
one
big
thing.
guy to begin with, so he already has, a bit of a disadvantage. I think he's only like 5'10". Mike Morris is like freaking 6'8". The dude is a monster. So I
Yes,
so I, I think that definitely works in your favor.
I can tell you one thing. We definitely not stopping Buck Powers. No one stopped that. No one stops that guy.
Well,
That
listen,
dude's.
man, I agree with what you were saying, absolutely. But what I will say is Sanders still has been playing very well as a corner and as that nickel spot. And I thought this was when they talked about him going both ways. I'm like, let's relax on that, okay? Yeah, no. But
He's doing a
defensively,
really
he's
good
been
job.
incredible, especially at that nickel spot. So you just never know. I mean, like Bowers is a guy you have to. He is a double team every snap
Dude,
guy. Like he is
he
just incredible.
he's one of those players, and you guys have had a couple, quite a few players like this at Bama Days where you're just, as a fan, you're just in love. Like, oh my god, I'm so glad that we were able to get this guy on campus. Like, he's amazing. Like just amazing to watch, dude. Like, it's. I don't think I can recall maybe since Travis Kelsey, but even at Cincinnati, he wasn't like hyped up
No.
the way Brock Bowers was.
Kyle Pitts is the last one I would look at like that.
Yeah, athletically, like the athletic boxes, yes. But I'm talking about the plays, man. I mean, Brock scores on so many different ways. Dude, he gets handoffs, like tight end
Hmm.
reverses, and takes them for touchdowns. I mean, like he is like the perfect tight end. I mean, like he really
Dude, yes.
it's just like, man, you know, you know, this ain't the forum for it, but as a Lions fan, it makes you upset because he is the kind of guy that I would spend a 7 pick on. You know what? Yeah, not that guy from Iowa. Let me get that guy from Georgia. I'll use my 7th overall pick, and I'll take you and you'll transform. Like, he's actually a difference maker, right? He transforms your offense, but we're not
So
talking about
you don't
that.
feel like T.J. Hockenson is
No, I do
is
not,
a
and I don't want to talk about it further because I don't want a tangent about something that I
yeah.
know they don't care about.
I got you. So the last thing I wanted to get into, we kind of actually just went right into it, but just the question is, are we seeing the parity that everybody wanted when it comes to college football? You know, you talk like there was talk a lot about like the Bama fatigue. It was Bama, Clemson, Ohio State. Those teams always made the playoff. They were always
Yeah,
in the top four, blah, blah, blah. Whereas now you're looking at it, right? Alabama loses this weekend to Tennessee. Tennessee's in the top five. Like, who would have called that, you know, preseason? And it's just, it essentially, it feels like the national championship is legitimately up for grabs. Even last year at this time, I don't think it was up for grabs. I thought it's Georgia's to win. The year
yeah.
before that, it was Alabama in the COVID year, just absolutely rolling through the schedule. It's like, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that team's gonna get it. 2019 was you know, at early on, you're like, well, I'm not quite sure. But then once LSU got to, you know, really that Alabama week, they beat Alabama. You're like, yeah, no, that team right there, that team looks special. So it's been a while since we've had, you know, even midway through the season where at this point of the season, you're like, this is legit. This is wide open. And I think it's been quite a while since we've been here.
Yeah. Look, at least for this year, there is definitely parity at the top. Now I don't know. It could be just a weird year where the have programs are kind of going through a transition where maybe some of their highly talented kids are still learning and not quite ready to make the impact that they're going to eventually make. And you know, some of the teams that are on that next echelon are a little bit more experienced, kind of even in the gap, if you will. So you know, that would, you know, play itself out in the following years. But at least for this year, there is definitely parity at the top. I think they are legitimate, and I'll put it like this: there are legitimate scenarios where you could say, what, there's maybe 4 or 5 teams can win a national title, with certain things going their way.
I mean, I
Maybe
listen.
6.
If we start to roll through teams, Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, Michigan. I'm not sold on Clemson.
They're undefeated. Look. Here's what I'll say about Clemson. Right, they're both undefeated, and they have a national championship, 2-time national championship. Right, they have a pedigree, and they're in position. So you can't just dismiss them. Now, have they looked impressive? Have they looked like prime the Clemson of, you know, well, let's say what,
But see,
2000?
none of these guys though have won a national championship.
I
You
understand
know what I
that.
mean?
No,
Like
I know
none
the
of them
player
have done it.
experience that those players have not, but
Correct.
they have played in big games. At least some of them have. You know, they're what, 2 years removed from the playoff. Last year they didn't make it. Maybe the year before they ran it, right? No, 2020.
In 2020, yes, they played Justin Fields that in round one, which Justin Fields went crazy, remember, broke his rib, all that stuff.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So
So
yeah,
I mean, look. They have some experience. They have a very, very experienced head coach. They have the pedigree as a program. You could say, look, they have some kind of chance to do it all, right? So I'm not going to dismiss them. So
okay.
I do think Clemson should match.
So that's five. If you want to
Alabama.
throw
Look,
Alabama in there, 6.
they're still Alabama, right?
Ole Miss, TCU. I mean, there's some
No,
teams.
you
I would
missed me
even
on
go to
this. I'm
Oklahoma
sorry.
State.
I can't take. I'm sorry. For me, your guy is Lincoln Riley. I could never take Lane Kiffin seriously. So
That's fine. That's fine. But Ole Miss has never been 7-0 at this point. You know what I
I
mean? Like
get it.
that's
It's
the
so
point. Like,
gimmicky. I can't see that working
how do
out.
you like Lincoln Riley and you don't like Lane Kiffin? I don't understand this. I
Dude,
don't get it.
because he's had so many like fall on his face moments as a head coach. You know, that Oakland was a disaster. Tennessee the first time was a disaster. You know, I can never take him like seriously. I'm sorry. Like,
Well,
I
I
just
guess
can't.
Lincoln Riley has been laughing his way to a national championship, and I forgot about it. But anywho,
He was very successful at Oklahoma. You see where Oklahoma is after he left. Now, granted, they're going through a transition, but I digress.
how many
And
players did he take
he's
with
doing a
him?
pretty damn good job at USC.
How many players did he take with him? Now granted, they are guys he recruited to Oklahoma, but I mean,
He took
how
one of
many
the big,
teams, if you take their starting quarterback away, are going to be amazing?
not just a starting quarterback, a pretty damn good starting quarterback. By the
And
way.
and that's not the only guy that he took.
If you're Oklahoma like fan, like you gotta feel the type of way about it. Like, yeah, man, like when you didn't get with the national title, we did have a lot of success under you, but you left, you our guy. Yeah, I don't know. Not my
Anywho,
problem. Not my
but
problem.
at the end of the day, Ole Miss is still 7-0. Like they're 7-0. They control their own destiny. You just never know, right? What if they have a win over Alabama similar to what Tennessee did, right? Like that. I don't think that's out of the question, out of the realm. So
It's
you
not
just never
the way that
know.
defense looks
You
right
just
now.
never
Look,
know.
I'll say this, and look, the way y'all defense looks right now is definitely possible. It is absolutely possible.
It'd be nice if Eli Ricks could figure out a way to get on the freaking football field. He's a 5-star recruit transfer. Somehow he can play at LSU, but can't play at Bama. But
I feel like
it,
Saban's just like he's watching, and deep in this layer of film, and probably has the lights off, probably some coffee because late at night he's studying, burning the midnight oil, and like he just sees certain things on film, and he just starts throwing crap around the room, just like what just losing his freaking mind when he's looking at film.
yes, yes,
And yeah,
absolutely.
this has to be, dude. This has to be one of his most frustrating years in a long time. Just
I would
absolutely
agree.
frustrating.
Even last year, I thought, me personally, I thought they overachieved a bit. Like I was just like, man, like I mean, you think about the LSU game, almost lost that. You think about the Auburn game, almost lost that. Lost to Texas A&M. And it just we got to the Georgia, the SEC championship game, and somehow the narrative of like, oh, well, Alabama still has a path to get in even if they lose. I'm like, no, they don't. They're a 2-loss team. They do not. But ended up beating Georgia, which that was wild. And then beat Cincinnati. They got the great draw, and but yeah. So last year I think they kind of overachieved a bit. Bryce, we saw the beginnings of Superman, and this year he has continued that trend of this dude is freaking unreal, but can't seem to get somebody to come along with him except for Gibbs, the running back. But yeah, so I said all that to say the college football landscape is just wide open for this year, is wide open as it looks now. And could you imagine if this was year one of the 12-team playoff?
Well,
Holy cow. It would be nuts.
yes, it would be nuts. And I would say, what impeccable timing for just the selling of the expansion of this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, look! If we had to play, we had the 12-team playoff now. Look at what we could have, right?
So you would have Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, Michigan would all be on a bye.
Mm-hmm.
Clemson would host USC.
Oh,
Alabama would host Oklahoma State. Ole Miss would host Oregon. And TCU would host UCLA in round. That would be our round one match.
All of those games are must.
Those games would each need their own day.
It's not even fair. It's not even fair. Like you're gonna have like 3 teams. Like you gotta have your laptop up, your phone, and your TV. Like you gotta have.
You could not overlap any of those games. Like that needs to be a noon, a 4. I mean, I don't know if you'd want to do one that late, but oh man, that would be unreal. That would be unreal. That'd be exciting.
I mean, that's one of those days where you got to set it up with the wife and with the family. Like, look, if we have stuff to do, let's knock it out.
No. There is no stuff to do at that. That's a week before conversation of.
Yes.
Like, okay, what do we need to? Let's go ahead and knock it out this weekend.
Yeah, I can't. Next weekend.
What grass cut?
Yes.
The hedges trimmed. Vacuum, shampoo the cart.
Like,
take care of all that. Yep, kids go to grandma and grandparents. No, but that's not we're not doing anything that day.
No,
absolutely not.
It's only pizza and wings or whatever you like to eat. You like cauliflower wings, that's fine too. Whatever you like, and beer. And you're just
oh my goodness, and just tweeting up a storm, like watching the game. That'd be pretty incredible.
Yes, I mean, like you don't even have to have a rooting interest, and like you're just like, man, this is awesome.
Right.
And then the cool thing about it was with this kind of parody, like I can't overlook anybody. Like we can match up against any one of these teams. It matters, right?
Right.
So, you know, and you know, it'll be fun at this point as a Michigan fan because got to buy, and I'm just like, all right, I don't have any stress right now. So I can just be a casual watching fan and still have, a potential rooting interest. So, no, man, that makes it really fun. Stressful and fun, but look, you know, but you know,
Yeah.
like I will say this, and we'll go into it, next week, rivalry week versus Ohio versus Michigan State. Look, I really want to just stomp out the Spartans, and I think for Michigan, it's imperative to understand that team in East Lansing never shows up defeated. They're going to show up, putting their best foot forward. And I would highly suggest that Michigan comes out like they versus Penn State and put their foot on MSU's neck early, 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 and to stump them out and move on, right? But we'll go into that next Wednesday, and when we really get to talk about the rivalry game.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. Please give us a thumbs up on your way out. It would be greatly appreciated. And that's it for us. So we are off this Saturday. We won't be here. We'll be watching the other games and just kind of hanging out, taking some time off. And then we will be back Wednesday, a week from today, 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We'll be here for about an hour as usual. Talking about Michigan State. So I would expect a pretty big turnout on that stream to kind of talk about the Spartans. So that is it for us. Thanks again for tuning in. Peace.
Peace.